My husband's ex walked into our home uninvited and said, "You're just a placeholder until he comes back to me." He smiled weakly and said nothing. I quietly left that night. 3 years later, at a business conference, she was introduced to the CEO of the billion-dollar company she wanted to impress and froze when she saw me on stage holding the mic. My name is Sarah, and I was 32 years old when my life took a sharp, unexpected turn. Mark, my husband of 5 years, was a kind, if somewhat passive man. We had built a comfortable life together in a quiet suburb of Chicago. Our days were filled with the usual routines: work, dinner, maybe a movie on the weekend. It wasn't particularly exciting, but it was ours, and I cherished the stability. One Tuesday evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Mark was still at his office downtown. I opened the door to find a woman standing on our porch. She was striking, with sharp features and an air of confidence that seemed to radiate from her. I didn't recognize her. "Yes?" I asked, a little uncertain. Her eyes, a piercing shade of green, scanned past me into our living room. "Is Mark here?" she asked, her voice cool and direct. "No, he's still at work. Can I help you with something?" She gave a small, almost pitying smile. "My name is Olivia," she said, as if that explained everything. "I used to live here with Mark." A cold dread washed over me. I had heard whispers, of course. Mark had mentioned an intense relationship before me, one that had ended badly, but he had never spoken her name, never given me any details. Now here she was, standing on our doorstep like he still belonged. "Olivia," I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. "What do you want?" She stepped past me into the entryway, not waiting for an invitation. "I just wanted to see him," she said, her gaze sweeping over our family photos on the wall, "and to see what he's been up to." Before I could react, Mark's key turned in the lock. He walked in, his usual tired smile fading instantly when he saw Olivia standing in our hallway. The color drained from his face. The silence that followed was thick and heavy, punctuated only by the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room. Olivia's eyes were fixed on Mark, a strange mix of longing and accusation in them. Mark, for his part, looked like a deer caught in headlight. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. She turned to me, her green eyes sharp and unwavering. "You're just a placeholder," she said, her voice laced with a chilling certainty, "until he comes back to me." My breath hitched. I looked at Mark, my heart pounding in my chest, searching for a denial, a sign that this was some kind of horrible misunderstanding. He stood there, his gaze fixed on the floor, his face pale and drawn. He said nothing. The air in the room felt suffocating. Every happy memory I had built within these walls suddenly felt fragile and tainted. The life I thought I had, the man I thought I knew, seemed to be crumbling before my eyes. Without a word, I turned and walked upstairs. I packed a small bag, my hands trembling. I could hear their muffled voices downstairs, but I didn't stop. I wrote a short note for Mark, leaving it on the kitchen counter. It simply said, "I'm gone." That night, I quietly left the home we had shared, the home I thought was our sanctuary. I didn't know where I was going, what I would do. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. I couldn't be someone's placeholder. The next few months were a blur of cheap motels and temporary jobs. I moved from Chicago to the West Coast, hoping to put some distance between myself and the life I had left behind. I threw myself into work, taking on extra shifts, trying to build a new life from the ground up. It was lonely and difficult, but with each passing day, I felt a little stronger, a little more like myself again. I started taking online business courses, something I had always been interested in but never had the time for. Slowly, a new ambition began to take root. 3 years passed. I had worked tirelessly, pouring all my energy into my career. The online courses had led to a junior marketing position at a small tech startup in San Francisco. My dedication and innovative ideas quickly propelled me up the ranks. I was now the head of marketing, leading a talented team and finally feeling like I was on the verge of something big. The company was expanding rapidly, and we were preparing for our first major industry conference in Las Vegas. This was a huge opportunity to network, build partnerships, and showcase our latest innovations. I was both nervous and excited. This conference could be a game changer. The day of the conference arrived, a whirlwind of presentations, workshops, and networking events. I was scheduled to give a presentation on our company's groundbreaking marketing strategies on the main stage in the afternoon. As I stood backstage, waiting for my turn, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was my moment. The presenter before me wrapped up, and the stage manager gave me the... I took a deep breath and walked out onto the brightly lit stage. The auditorium was packed. As my eyes scanned the audience, a familiar face in the front row made my blood run cold. It was Olivia. She looked older, perhaps a little harder around the edges, but there was no mistaking those piercing green eyes. She was impeccably dressed, holding a sleek notepad, her expression one of intense focus. I realized with a jolt that she was likely there representing her own company, undoubtedly successful in her own right. My heart pounded in my chest. I hadn't seen or heard from either Mark or Olivia in 3 years. The memory of that night, of her cruel words and Mark's silence, flooded back with painful clarity. I tried to compose myself, focusing on the slides on the teleprompter. I began my presentation, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside. I spoke about our innovative approaches, our recent successes, and our vision for the future. As I moved through my slides, I noticed Olivia's gaze never wavered. It was intense, almost predatory. I couldn't decipher her expression. Was it surprise? Recognition? Something else? After about 20 minutes, it was time for the keynote speaker, the final presentation of the day. The buzz in the auditorium intensified as the conference organizer took the stage to introduce him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming through the speaker, "it is my distinct honor to introduce the CEO of Stellar Tech, a true visionary in the tech industry, a man whose leadership has propelled his company to unprecedented heights. Please welcome Mr. Mark Olson." The name hit me like a physical blow. Mark? CEO of Stellar Tech? A billion-dollar company? The passive, quiet man I had been married to? It couldn't be. But then, the man walked onto the stage. He was taller than I remembered, his posture more confident. But there was no mistaking the familiar lines around his eyes, the slight curve of his smile. It was Mark. My mind reeled. How could this be? What had happened in the 3 years since I had left? He began his speech, his voice strong and articulate, a far cry from the hesitant tone I remembered. He spoke about innovation, resilience, and the importance of taking risks. He was charismatic and commanding, holding the entire audience captive. As he spoke, his eyes briefly met mine. There was a flicker of something in his gaze, recognition, perhaps even a hint of regret, before he quickly looked away. The irony was almost unbearable. Olivia, the woman who had dismissed me as a mere placeholder, was here, likely hoping to impress the CEO of a billion-dollar company. And that CEO was the man she had expected to come crawling back to her, the man I had quietly walked away from. The conference organizer then announced a special segment, a fireside chat with the CEO, and joining him on stage would be key leaders from various companies for a discussion on future collaboration. One of the individuals invited to the stage was the head of marketing from my company, me. As I was introduced and walked back onto the stage, I saw Olivia's face. Her confident facade had completely crumbled. Her eyes were wide with shock, her mouth slightly agape. She stared at me as if she had seen a ghost. I took my seat on the stage, a few feet away from Mark. The lights were bright, and I could feel the eyes of the entire auditorium on us. The conference organizer began asking questions, directing some to Mark and others to the panel member. At one point, the organizer turned to me. "Sarah," he said, "your company has shown remarkable growth in the past few years. What would you say has been the key to your success?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. This was my chance. Not for revenge, but for closure, for myself. "Sometimes," I began, my voice clear and steady, "the key to success is recognizing when you're not valued and having the courage to walk away. Sometimes, the greatest opportunities arise when you create your own path, when you refuse to be someone else's placeholder." My eyes met Olivia's across the auditorium. Her face was a mask of disbelief and something that looked very much like regret. Then, my gaze shifted to Mark. He was looking at me, his expression unreadable. The discussion continued, but the energy in the room had shifted. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. After the session ended, there was a flurry of activity as people began to mingle. I was immediately surrounded by colleagues and potential partners, eager to connect. I saw Olivia trying to make her way through the crowd towards the stage, but she was constantly being intercepted by other attendees. I deliberately avoided eye contact, focusing on the conversations around me. Then, I felt a tap on my arm. I turned to see Mark standing there, his expression hesitant. "Sarah," he said, his voice low, "can we talk?" This was it. The moment I had unknowingly been building towards for 3 years. I looked at him, at the successful CEO he had become, and a strange sense of calm washed. The hurt and anger I had carried for so long seemed to have finally dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of self-assurance. "I don't think there's anything left to talk about, Mark," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I found my own path, and it led me here. I think we both did." I offered him a small, polite smile and then turned back to the people waiting to speak with me. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze on my back, but I didn't look back. My placeholder days were long behind me. My stage was my own now. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more engaging tales with unexpected twists, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next captivating news. We love bringing you stories that keep you on the edge of your seat.